These last few days, my Kawasaki G4 TRC has been acting up. It's lost power of all kinds. And then it starts spitting and sputtering after about 7,000 RPMs. Then got down to 5,000 RPMs and started spitting and sputtering and wouldn't go any faster. And then it finally just quit. So, lost spark entirely. Spark plug's good. Checked with a new one. So, I'm gonna say it's points. It's about the only thing it could be. So we're gonna get, normally it'd be a Phillips head, number 2 or number 3 Phillips driver, but I switched over to 304 stainless. So for me it's a 5 or 4 millimeter or something like that, 4 or 5 millimeter Allen. Just pull these 2 screws. Then you'll need a flathead screwdriver, a 3/16 flathead screwdriver. 2 would be best. And we will, whoopsies, rotate the flywheel. See, back there is our points. And they are not opening up very far. They should be wide open right now, but they are not open very far at all. So that's our problem most likely. And we will check our condenser connection. Okay, it seems good. So then we get a feeler gauge. Set the points to 16 thousandths of an inch. Now to do that, there is, see this little screw back here? You loosen it. Then you get a flathead screwdriver and stick it in this little slot up here. And you can rotate the backing plate, the back plate of the points until the gap is right. Then get your second screwdriver and tighten that little screw. And it'll fire right up almost every time. Let's give it a whirl. Now, before we adjust the points, we're going to do something. We're going to clean them, because that could be the issue as well. They are opening about, I'd say about 8 thousandths, which ain't enough, but it should be enough for it to spark. So we're going to get some sandpaper or emery cloth and open up the points gap and stick it in there and clean them up. So I found no loose connections, so the next thing to do is test the coil. So I've got a positive lead coming from the coil on the primary coil. Then we're gonna bump that against the battery. Now if it don't spark here, it means we have a bad coil. See if I can set this flipping phone somewhere. Nope. So I found somewhere to set the phone, and I'm gonna bump the positive of the coil against the positive of the battery. And I do not hear or see, or I hear something, but I do not see it sparking. I hear a spark, but I don't see it. Now one more test we can do is put the alligator clip in the wire coming off of the points to the coil. Put it in there and bump it against the ground and hope we see or feel something. Shouldn't be a very high voltage, but enough to see a little tiny spark once bumped against kind of rusty metal. So we'll test that. Well, I'm getting no voltage at all coming off the points, so the next thing to do is to pop this whole cover off and look for a loose connection behind the flywheel. Gotta pop the flywheel off, but to do that you gotta pull the whole damn cover off. If you have a Kawasaki G4TR like I do, to remove this cover, you just remove these 4 bolts. The cable that should be here, and this bolt right here is, well, that holds the dust shroud on, but I don't have the cable for this, so. Then, get a hammer, tap on it gently. Pry up on it. Oil will spill out. So will a few other things, usually. Oops. Okay, so, and that can go somewhere clean. And you will almost always need one of these gadgets. Almost always. They're not very expensive and they are totally worth it. So we need that, get that out. Then we'll wait to get the bearings out. The bearings and gears. And we'll get a syringe and we'll suck all this oil out and dispose of it. And then we can go about removing all the screws on the outside. You don't need to remove these 2. Just start removing all the screws that you can see holding the cover on. And yeah. Then the cover just pops right off. Now I should mention with the G4TR, when you suck the oil out of here with the syringe, you can just dump it right back in through this hole. Now, if I remember right, we'll pull this gear off first. Put that somewhere. Then we'll pull this one off, and bearings will fall out almost every time. And we'll pull the bottom one off. And if they don't fall out, push them out. Make them fall out. If you don't, you'll be sorry. But how do you get them back in? That's easy. A little dab of grease in there in each hole, and they'll stay in there. So now that everything's off and apart, see, this comes in handy for pulling those little bearings out, those little balls. So now we can just pull this up, which usually takes some prying, not much, but some. And then we can pull the flywheel off. So now we've got the cover off and the flywheel nut. And right now is a great time to check your bearings. So first give it a little twist like this. And if you hear a little bit of a clunk inside, or if you can turn it this far before you reach pressure, that means your rod bearings are going out. Now we should check our main bearings. So we'll give it a side-to-side motion. If you can hear or feel clunking there, or any give, those bearings are going out as well. And the lower rod bearings, I replaced the upper rod bearings, but the lower rod bearings and the main bearings on this are going out. So I need to replace them too. That's going to be fun. Or something. So now we need to go get our flywheel puller, which is a must. Trust me. I tried doing this without the puller and I fucked this up bad once. Pretty much had to replace the crank. So I tried a brass punch and a hammer and the pry bar method. And I mushroomed this thread so bad that there was no way I think it's supposed to take a 10 millimeter nut to begin with. I could barely even fit a 12 millimeter over it. So I went with a file and I filed it down around again and re-threaded it, put a new nut on. That's the only reason it's still usable. That was 2 years ago. Still, I would not suggest doing that. It took about 4 hours to file it back down around. So, time to go get the $10 tool. Now, you can buy a whole set of tools like I did for 25 bucks. And you'll have enough for pretty much everything. So, I got my tool. It's just this little gadget. Now, these are left-hand threads on the G4TR. So what we do is we tighten this in there, back it out a turn, then we tighten this up, then get a wrench, hold this one, and tighten this one, and the flywheel pops right off. It was that easy. No hammer needed. No damage done to anything. Super simple. Just like that. Now that the flywheel is off, the next thing to do is to look for loose wires. Or wires that look, well, not right. And I think I spot one. Now, I actually did spot it, and I know that's the cause. So, it was, get a pointer. It was bumped up against the plate here. And it's bare right here. So that's our cause. We weren't getting any power to it, to the coil, because this is the charging coil. And this wire goes directly to the charging coil. So, all we need to do is fix it. Probably some heat shrink or something, and that'll do it. So, because I need to unsolder the wire from the condenser to put heat shrink on the wire, I gotta have a soldering gun. But I'm several hundred feet from any power source, and I don't want to string out 3 extension cords after somehow managing to find them, if that's possible. So I've got my little soldering station here. A little 2-stroke generator from 1954. Let's see if she fires up even. Oopsies. I'm sure she will, but... good. It works. So I have got the wire repaired. And so the next thing to do is put the flywheel back on. Test it for spark. Get the key lined up and all that good stuff. Get our lock washer. Get our flywheel nut. And tightened up tester for spark. I ain't gonna flip the bike back upright, so I'm just gonna test this way. I see a spark. Not the best spark, but it's a good spark. Good enough. She'll run. That was our problem. So now we just gotta put it back together. So the next thing to do is put the cover on, which is real easy. Just slide it on and mount it on. So start figuring out where bolts go and bolt it on, and then we'll worry about this clusterfuck. Now it's time for the bitch part. So we're gonna get this part, we're gonna put it in there. Then it's time to start playing with balls. Start playing with its balls. So, let me get the spark plug, put it somewhere cleanish. How about up there? So then, what we have to do is we have to figure out how to get each and every one of them to stay put. We gotta put them all in their holes, then put the sprocket on, or gear. So one thing that helps is to get some heavy grease, like machinery grease. You can go to most parts stores and get it. Like for a grease gun, I have a grease tube. Axle grease works too. Works fine. And dab some of that in each hole, and it will hold that bearing in there like nothing you ever seen for what it is. So, yeah. We'll do that, then we'll put the larger gear on, then we'll put the next 4 in and put the smaller gear on. Now, if there's already oil in there, like there is, chances that you will need grease are very low. I don't need grease, so, I ain't using grease. They're just staying in there from the oil. Now we're gonna get the bigger sprocket, and that notch goes down. And we want to line it up with those two. Okay, looks good. There. Now it looks good. So then we can do the same with the top 4 balls and start playing with its top 4 balls and put the smaller sprocket on the same way. So next it's time to finagle this on. So there's this little thing back here that you gotta finagle into this groove. And if you don't, your 2-speed transmission right here won't work. It'll be stuck in whatever gear you left it in when you assembled it. So you'd better make sure that you get it in there. And you'll know because you'll have tension both ways when you pull the lever. If it's in there. If it's not, you'll not have tension. So it might actually be easiest to pull this out and slip it on there. Oopsies. But slip it on there, like so, and then put this assembly in there. And now the moment of truth.